Hey guys, for those of you that don't know me, I ended rank 68 in North America in set 6, and after playing a lot of PvE, I created a list of the strongest early game boards that you could play. I hope you guys enjoy. So the first set of boards that I'm going to show you guys is going to be the Jade and Dragonmancer boards. The first thing you might notice is that 2 of the Jade units share the Dragonmancer trait as well. So early game, you're usually going to plan on flexing around the Jade and Dragonmancer traits. So since you're lacking a frontline, a third great Jade unit you could play is going to be Tarek. The problem here is that you actually don't have that much damage since Ashe is more of a utility unit and Karma is not as strong as you might think. So what I like to do is to play Ezreal. This gives you 2 SWIFTSHOT, and since Ezreal is a lot easier to 2-star, I usually end up stacking Ezreal with attack speed and AZ items. Some great items for Ezreal are probably Guinsoo's, IE, Shiv also works. Set 7 Ezreal is a lot like set 6 Ezreal, so if you know the itemization for Ezreal last set, it's about the same thing. At level 5, if you get a Lee Sin, it completes your synergies pretty well. You get in 2 Tempest and 3 Dragonmancer, and in this case, you could probably just end up Dragonmancering your Lee Sin. Lee Sin is also great at holding AP items, so if you wanted to, you could probably put GS, Jeweled Gauntlet, Deathcap. This way you have the option of flexing into both an AD and an AP board. So if you don't want to play around SWIFTSHOT, you could just drop the Ezreal and instead play around 2 Guardians, but you're going to need another source of damage, so you could just play the Lee Sin. In this variation, for level 6 and 7, you could actually just throw in 2 Assassins for more damage. In this case, you could play Kiana and Diana, and this ends up giving you 2 Scale Scorn and 2 Assassin. In this variation, if you happen to get a Swain early, you could play around Swain instead. Here you'll have 3 Jade, 3 Dragonmancer, and 2 Shapeshifter, and the 3rd Jade unit this time is going to be Gnar. The problem with this board is that you don't really have a frontline, so for your 5th unit, you could just look for a random 2-star tank and throw them in. So in this case, I could just put in Leona. You usually want to Dragonmancer your Swain since he's going to be your carry. Best in slot Swain is probably going to be Guinsoo's +2. Guinsoo's is actually a really good item in set 7 because a lot of the late game dragons or carries use Guinsoo's. Alternatively, if you hit the other Dragonmancers as well, you could flex into a 6 Dragonmancer board late game and have Swain carry. So next, I'm going to talk about Astral Mages. Similarly to Jade Dragonmancers, Astral Mages also have 2 early game units that share the same traits. In this case, it's going to be Nami and Vladimir. And interestingly enough, there are 2 3-cost units, Sylas and Alawi, that complete these synergies perfectly. So this would be your ideal level 4 board. Unfortunately, these 2 units are both 3-cost, so it's pretty unrealistic to hit them. Your level 4 board is most likely going to look something like this. You're going to play Skarner as your 3rd Astral and Heimerdinger as your 3rd Mage. If you 2-star Heimerdinger, you could put your AP items on him. Otherwise, you're most likely going to be stacking your Nami. And the best items on Nami are probably going to be Shojin, Archangels, and Deathcap. From here, you have 2 options. You could play Standard, or you could play Reroll Mages. If you play Reroll Mages, you want to slow roll at level 5 for Vladimir and Nami. And in both cases, your mid-game board is most likely going to look something like this. You're going to have 5 Mages with Rise. Rise is going to be your 5th Mage, and it also gives you Guild. You're also going to have 3 Astral and 2 Bruisers. Another variation to the mid-game board is you could also play around 6 Astral. If you're playing around 6 Astral, you're going to be playing around Nidalee, Skarner, and Varus, and your 3rd Mage is going to be Rise. In all of these variations, you're going to have built a lot of AP items, so most likely you're going to have to play around Rise or Aso late game. So the Cannoneer opener is actually quite common because 3 of the Cannoneers that you could play are all 1 and 2 cost units. Generally, you don't want to itemize Jinx because she's not a very good unit. She's mainly just a synergy bot for Corki because she shares the same tags as her. You usually only want to itemize Senna and Tristana. So if you're playing around Senna, you usually want to be playing around 3 Ragewing. The 2 other Ragewings you could play are Set and Shen. Shen is the priority because you lack a frontline. And if you're playing Shen, you could just splash in a 2nd Bruiser like Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is perfect because he's a Revel, and Jinx is also a Revel and a Cannoneer, so it fits your synergies perfectly. Itemization for Senna is just going to be attack speed and AD. So Guinsoo's, IE, Last Whisper, Runan's, Giant Slayer, they're all good. If you're playing around Tristana, there are a few other options you could go. Generally, the itemization for Tristana is the same, but you're just going to be playing around Trainer instead. So here you're playing Heimerdinger and you're going to get Namzi as your frontline. So at level 5, you have a few options when you're playing this board. You could play a 3rd Cannoneer like Senna. This gives you a bit more damage. You could also play Lulu. This gives you a bit more frontline. Alternatively, you could splash in a 2nd Bruiser like Shen. And if you really wanted to, you could also play 3 Mage if you have a lot of AP items. So in this case, you would probably take out Shen for Sylas because Sylas is a Bruiser and a Mage. And your 3rd Mage could probably just be Rise. So next up, I'm going to be talking about Ragewing. So Ragewing, you only want to play 3 Ragewing early if you happen to get a 2-star Senna or a 1-star Swain. In my opinion, the other early game Ragewing units don't actually benefit from Ragewing that much. So if you're playing around Senna, your early game board is most likely going to look something like this. Your 3 Ragewing units are going to be Senna, Set, and Shen. Because you're playing Senna, you want a second Cannoneer, so you're playing Jinx. And the perfect 5th unit to fill out your synergies is going to be Tahm Kench because it gives you both Bruiser and Revel. So Senna works very well with AD items like Guinsoo's, Last Whisper, IE. So if you're playing this board, late game you could probably pivot into either Corki, Xayah, Talon. So if you're playing around Swain, your board might look something like this instead. Your 2 other Ragewings are going to be Shen and Set as usual. And then because Swain is a shapeshifter, you want a second shapeshifter in, so you could play Gnar. And then you could also play Ashe as well to fulfill the 3 Dragonmancer, so you could buff your Swain. At level 6, because you're only 1 off Jade, you could just play a 3rd Jade unit. Any Jade unit works, so you could just play a random Karma. Another quick variation is you play Swain, Set, and Shen, and then your 4th unit is just going to be Lee Sin. You could Dragonmancer either your Lee Sin or Swain depending on who you have items for. So Swain is attack speed and Lee Sin is AP items. And then in this variation, you could just splash in 2 assassins and it's going to make your board very strong. The last variation is that mid-game, there's a chance you might come across 6 Ragewing. In that case, you could just play all 6 Ragewings. Usually in this case, you want to put all your attack speed items or AD items on either Senna or Swain, and all your tank items on your Hecarim. So next, I'll be talking about the Warrior Opener. You want to consider committing onto the Warrior Opener if you're close to a 2-star Yone early, or you hit a 1-star Olaf. Usually, you're not going to get both, so I'm going to cover both scenarios where you only get one. So let's say you only have a Yone. You generally want to play around 2 Mirage and 2 Bruiser, so the 3 other units are going to be Leona, Shen, and Skarner. Shen is actually one of the best 2-cost units in the game because of his ability, so you want to play Shen whenever you get the chance to. Some really good items for Yone are going to be Guinsoo's Hodge QSS. I think best items for Yone are going to be Guinsoo's QSS +1. I think the 3rd item preferably should be a healing item, but I think Yone is pretty flexible. You just want attack speed, damage, and healing on him. If you're playing around Olaf instead, then you should be playing around 2 Scale Scorn. So a good second Scale Scorn you can play around is going to be Lilia. And because you're playing Lilia, you want a second Cavalier. So Sejuani is quite good because she is both a Cavalier and she's Guild. A good combination of items on Olaf is going to be Runaan's +2. The 2 items are going to be 1 damage item and 1 healing. So Bloodthirster is good, Deathblade is good, Giant Slayer is good, Guinsoo's is also good. If you have both Yone and Olaf, a mid-game board that's really strong is going to be 3 other Cavaliers. This is going to give you 2 Scale Scorn, 2 Mirage, and 3 Cavalier. An alternate mid-game board you could play is also going to be 4 Warriors. So if you're playing 4 Warriors, it's going to be Aatrox, Yone, Olaf, and Shen. And the 2 remaining slots are going to be 2 Cavaliers, which is going to be Lilia and Nunu. You could play the reroll version of this, in which case you would slow roll at level 6 for 3-star Yone and 3-star Olaf. Or you could just play standard, and then at level 8 you would flex in a legendary unit board. So next up is going to be the Shapeshifter Opener. There are a couple of shapeshifters you can play early game. The main ones are going to be Nidalee and Gnar since they're 1 and 2 costs. Swain and Elise are both 3 costs, which are harder to get. I would say that it's easier to play around Swain as a shapeshifter if you get him early because of his tags. Swain is a Dragonmancer and a Ragewing, and a lot of the early game units share these tags, while Elise is a Whispers, and there aren't that many good early game Whispers units, so you should probably only commit onto shapeshifter if you get a 2-star Nidalee early or a 1-star Swain. So if you're playing around your 2-star Nidalee, there are a few options that you could go with. You could play around 3 Jade. The 3 Jade units are going to be Gnar, Karma, and Taric. This gives you a solid frontline. And itemization for Nidalee, I think best in slot is going to be Guinsoo's +2. I think Deathblade is quite good on her. And then for the last item, you could throw in some healing, so Hodge or Bloodthirster is good. I would say that Jade is the stronger variation in terms of stats. The other variation you could play is Astral. If you're playing Astral, I think Astral is a bit weaker than the Jade variation because Astral only gives them 10 AP. But the thing with Astral is that it enables you to play reroll Nidalee a lot easier. The reason is because Astral increases the odds to show Astral champions every 5th shop, and this applies to reroll as well. So if you're playing Astral, Nidalee reroll should always be an option for you. So if you want to play Nidalee reroll at level 4 at the creep round, you hyper roll down to around 20 or 30 gold, and it's super easy to hit Nidalee 3 because of the Astral trait. Of course, you don't have to reroll nearly. You could technically just play standard, but in both cases, your level 6 board is most likely going to look something like this. Here you're going to be playing around 4 shapeshifters and 2 bruisers, and you're going to have 3 astral as well for the extra econ and AP. Finally, if you hit a Swain early, you want to be playing around 3 Dragonmancer to buff your Swain. And then you want to be playing around 2 shapeshifters, and this happens to give you 3 Jade as well. Again, the problem with this is you lack a frontline, so you want to just throw in as many frontline units as you can at level 5 and 6. So Braum, Aatrox, anything you could find. Itemization for Swain is just going to be Gwynsu's +2. So SWIFTSHOT is another pretty common opener because a lot of the SWIFTSHOT units are 1, 2, and 3 costs. The most common units you're probably going to play are Ezreal and Twitch. Ashe doesn't really do much damage. If you get a Varus from an early game orb, you could itemize around your Varus as well. So one variation of SWIFTSHOT is going to be around Ezreal and Twitch. If you 2-star your Ezreal, you want to itemize your Ezreal. Otherwise, you could also itemize your Twitch. For Ezreal, good items for him are going to be Shiv, Gwynsu's, QSS. Any AD item is good on him as well. And for Twitch, you strictly want attack speed and AD and crit items. A frontline you could play is going to be Sejuani and Lilia. This gives you 2 Cavalier and 2 Guild. Additionally, you don't have to play around Ezreal. You could also play around Varus if you get him from an early game orb. In this case, some good items for him are going to be Gwynsu's and Shiv. And for a frontline, you could just play a standard bruiser frontline. There are a few variations with SWIFTSHOT you could go. For example, if you're only playing around 2 SWIFTSHOT, you could play around 4 bruisers. This is going to give you 3 astral, and it's going to be quite good for you since it gives you some extra gold. Alternatively, you could also play 4 SWIFTSHOT. This gives you a lot of backline damage, but your frontline is going to lack a bit, so you should only play this variation if you 2-star your frontline. And usually, if you're playing SWIFTSHOT, it's a very easy transition into Xayah, because Xayah herself is a SWIFTSHOT unit, and she shares a lot of the same items as the other early game carries. So for assassins, you usually only want to commit onto assassins if you get a 2-star Kayn or Qiyana early, or a 1-star Diana. Assassins are pretty easy to play around. Assassins are all your backline damage. You really only need to worry about getting a good frontline. So one good frontline you could play is going to be 4 bruisers. This gives you 2 Scale Scorn and 2 Warrior as well. You don't have to play 4 bruisers. You could drop out of 2 bruisers towards the mid game and play 2 other units. Another frontline you could play is going to be 3 Cavalier. In this case, your 3 Cavaliers are going to be Nunu, Sejuani, and Lilia. This also gives you 1 Guild and 2 Scale Scorn. Finally, another frontline you could play is going to be 4 Guardian. I think 4 Guardian is a bit weaker than the other 2, but still pretty good if you have nothing else. You don't have to play 4 Guardian. You could drop out of 2 Guardian, and instead, if you're playing around Diana, you could play 4 Scale Scorn. You could just add in Olaf and Lilia. So for itemization, you generally want to try and itemize around Diana. Diana works very well with AP items, so Death Cap is quite good. You could also put in Ionic Spark. Since she's an assassin, she's also very good with Infinity Edge. And then for Qiyana, she works well with typical AD items, so IE, BT, Giant Slayer. Tank items are just going to go on whoever you 2-star from your frontline. So this concludes my early game guide for set 7. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like and comment down below. In a few days, once the meta stabilizes, I'm going to be releasing a late game flex guide for set 7. If you're interested in that video, subscribe to my channel to get updated whenever I release it, and I'll see you guys next time.